We are going live in 1, 2, 3.
Hello, and welcome to the third session of the Colorado Pollinator Summit. We are excited to bring you a session that's all about how we work together to make long-lasting change for pollinators and for people too. And we call this session Cultivating Community Collaborations. My name is Amy Yarger. I'm the Horticulture Director at Butterfly Pavilion, and I'm just going to give a little bit of overview about why and how and what we're doing here in this session today before I bring forward our wonderful communities that are represented today. So I think none of us who are here today probably underestimate the plight of pollinators currently. They're so important to us. They are in crisis, but that's not really what we're focusing on. We're focusing on solutions today. And the key that I've learned in my 20 years working here at Butterfly Pavilion is that partnerships are powerful. For lasting change to be made, it can't just be one person working alone in a vacuum. It has to be really finding ways to work together, really focusing on the diversity of our stakeholders, the different perspectives, the different expertises, and cultivating those robust and sustainable partnerships. And that includes local government, that includes neighborhood leadership, that includes schools and senior communities and communities of faith and other organizations. Even getting the local birding club and hiking club, everything down to even that small level is important. And so what collaboration does is it allows us to pool our resources and expertise and fight above our weight. And what I mean by that is we all know that issues like climate change really weigh down on people. There's actually a term called solastalgia, which means the grief of losing your basically your connection to ecology and ecosystems and the earth. And people are feeling that, especially young people right now. They hear some of the dire news every day, and they know that they fear for the future. And so how are we going to fight these big battles? Maybe focusing on the smallest creatures among us is a really good way to do that, especially if we can get a lot of different kinds of people involved. So I just want to, as a brief example, talk about a project that Butterfly Pavilion is involved in Broomfield, Colorado, where we are working with the city and county of Broomfield and a developer called McWhinney to create a pollinator district in Broomfield where Butterfly Pavilion will eventually be moving. And the idea is that these 1,200 acres for this new community that's being built, there's no reason that we can't prioritize saving water, reducing waste, focusing on native ecosystems, focusing on biodiversity throughout this whole development. And Butterfly Pavilion is lending its expertise to make sure that happens. And the developer and the city are contributing resources to make sure that happens and accountability to make sure that happens. And so that's just one example of a collaboration that's really instituting something huge instead of just going along with business as usual. So today in this panel, we're going to talk about even larger collaborations. And we're going to focus on 4 different communities with 4 different ways of really working for pollinators and working for people. And so everyone who is watching this panel and learning from this panel, there are some goals that we have, and I really can't wait to see what people have in terms of feedback and questions and chat, because this is something that we want to see actually becoming more widespread and finding models to make sure that other communities have these same resources. So some of our goals is we want to use these models to learn to identify and cultivate collaboration so we can get more work done. And even with the pandemic, it's been incredible to see what these communities have done to forward conservation. We also want to understand the challenges and opportunities of each model, because this work is not easy. Everyone who is working on this issue has war stories and scars. And we want to hear about those because we want to learn from those. And then finally, we are really hoping that out of this panel, we have a concrete way forward to launch a community network of tool sharing and best practices for other Colorado communities. So it doesn't just stop with the 4 communities we have with us today. It goes on until it reaches out throughout the whole state and beyond. So really, that's what we want to think about today. How do we share what works for pollinators and for our communities, and on a larger scale, instead of everybody kind of working in their own silo? And collaboration is the key to that. So I am really excited. The 4 communities we're going to be working or hearing from today, we're going to start with Manitou Springs, and then we're going to hear from Lakewood, then Boulder, and then Fort Collins will be joining us remotely. So with that, I am going to introduce, we're going to hear from Melody Doherty first. She's the founder and executive director of Manitou Pollinators. Then we will be hearing from Judith Chandler, who is the city council member at Manitou Springs. And then finally, Ali Shook, who is the watershed education coordinator with the Fountain Creek Watershed. So let's start off with Manitou Springs. And here is Melody.
Hello. Hello, my name is Melody, and I'm so grateful to be here with everybody. And on the screen, you can see Manitou Springs, and you can see that we are nestled in a canyon at 6,412 feet at the base of Pikes Peak, considered the traditional lands of the Ute, Arapaho, Apache, Comanche, Cheyenne, Kiowa, Pueblo, Lakota, Dakota, and Navajo tribes. The 2018 bee die-off colony collapse along the Front Range took a toll on Manitou's beekeepers. They invited our community to an open house to learn about their challenges, their bees, and why this event had occurred. Beth Korpenning, founder of the Manitou Springs Pollinator Project, now known as the Manitou Pollinators, and myself heeded the wisdom and warnings of our beekeepers. Questing for a solution to the perils pollinators are facing led us to the doors of the Butterfly Pavilion to bring their Pollinator District Certification Program to Manitou Springs community. Why? Because a Pollinator District is only possible and achievable through its community of stakeholders committed to conserving and improving habitat for pollinators in all aspects of operations. The stakeholders of a pollinator district includes the businesses, schools, public facilities and parks, faith communities, neighborhoods, and just neighbors that are designed and maintained and constructed in such a way that pollinator habitat demonstrates a net gain over the footprint of development. Beth and I heard this as the solution that our local beekeepers were warning us about. Their bees were continually losing their habitat in the face of rampant development and climate change and crisis. So a pollinator district, what we really liked about, engages everyone who lives, works, and plays there in this vital work, and that the community members are the vital stakeholders with resources, becoming citizen scientists, gardeners, beekeepers, and stewards of the land. The pollinator district is a long-term commitment because these habitats and the populations that rely on them take years to establish and thrive. What I saw then and now, here and there, is that all of us are stakeholders. The daunting task of creating pollinator habitat became more manageable after each new person, organization, business, school, or household said, "Hey, Melody, heck yeah. I want to become a partner or stakeholder with the Manitou Pollinators. Let's do this." So I'm thrilled to announce that the City of Manitou Springs recently signed an MOU, woohoo, at the end of this month, with the Butterfly Pavilion, taking us one step closer to achieving our goal, my personal goal, of becoming a pollinator district in 5 to 10 years. I'm also really proud to be here with Ali Shook, Fountain Creek Watershed District Alliance, and City Councilwoman Judith Chandler as vital stakeholders and partners leading the way for pollinator conservation in Southern Colorado. We have a lot to do to catch up with our friends and our sisters and brothers in the north. So Manitou's bee-savvy stakeholders include District 14, Flying Pig Farm, Manitou Seed Library, the Creative District, and many, many wonderful neighbors who teach me so much more about their pollinators in Manitou. It has taken me and the Manitou pollinators 3 years to pull together a municipality committed to becoming the first certified pollinator district in Colorado. It was a task, as you all know, especially during COVID, but we were really insistent on, you know, the way to get through COVID is to just keep looking out your window, look at those green flowers, go look at that monarch, go out and just breathe the fresh air, and we'll get through this together. So it has created a new buzz in my little town filled with hope, renewal, excitement, and satisfaction. Thank you. Judith, you're on, and you'll have to, excuse me, you'll have to move your own slides.
All right, so we're going to skip ahead. My name is Allie Shook. I'm the Watershed Outreach Coordinator for Fountain Creek Watershed Flood Control and Greenway District. And I'm just really pleased to be asked to speak today, and just really impressed with all the speakers from this morning. So let's start off with a little terminology. So what the heck is a watershed? We all live in one. We all impact one. And being that we are a headwater state here in Colorado, we have a big responsibility to our 19 states that do rely on water that comes from our headwaters. So we have a big responsibility, and we know that whatever happens to us locally also impacts folks downstream. And a little note there that says the ocean starts in Colorado. So kind of an interesting thing to think about. Well, here's a little snapshot of my home watershed, the Fountain Creek watershed. We lovingly refer to it as the chicken tender because it kind of looks like one. But it is a huge area of land and water, and it's the second most studied watershed in the whole United States because of our huge elevation changes, our extremes in temperatures, precipitation, soil types. A very interesting place to be. And in the work that I do across the watershed, I met up with Melody, and we determined very quickly that we had some definite shared interests. And by protecting our water resources, it also happens to protect pollinators. So after a few meetings, we decided that a public event was in order. So we quickly put one together. So the first pollinator party was held this past June during Pollinator Week under a shelter in Manitou Springs, right along Fountain Creek. We had the mayor share a proclamation about pollinators. There were seed and plant giveaways. We had an activity station with the butterfly pavilion. We had a hike along the creek. We did a chalk art station. We played watershed plinko. So really just fun activities for all ages. And we know that it's an event that we want to continue to build on. We also received a grant. The school district and the Manitou Arts, Culture, and Heritage Board gave us a grant so that we could do pollinator education in the schools. We also had the youth develop some art projects, and we judged those, and the winning artwork were turned into banners that were displayed along downtown Manitou Springs. And it was really cool to see those kids out there, you know, enjoying their artwork down on Main Street and taking selfies. So we also have a unique initiative through the Watershed District called the Brew Shed Alliance, because what's the #1 ingredient in beer? It's water. So there's a great connection. So we have 25 craft breweries that are part of this alliance who host fundraisers, cleanups, and events throughout the year, including our monthly liquid lecture series. And we approached the Manitou Brewing Company, one of our alliance members, and they very willingly brewed up a honey beer leading up to that pollinator party. And we called it Pints for Pollinators. So it was a fundraiser, and everyone that purchased a pint received some seeds as well. So it was a great way to raise awareness for the upcoming event. We also did a lot of seed bomb giveaways this year. We won a grant to reestablish a native plant garden that we're putting up a signage at and using as an educational facility. We created some new web content, and just really trying to figure out ways to reach people wherever they're at. So I guess that's, I don't know, maybe that slide didn't make it. But yeah, just one other program I wanted to mention. We host the largest cleanup in the state of Colorado. It's called Creek Week. And this past September, we engaged over 2,200 volunteers cleaning up over 9 days. What a great way to connect people and educate them about things beyond watershed health and clean water, but the value of our pollinators. So all of our cleaner uppers received seed bombs, and we also created an educational document promoting and providing a few more resources on pollinators. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Amy and see where we're at next.
All right, so I think we'll go on to our colleagues from Lakewood to share what they have accomplished for pollinators. We have Jim Hasselgren, who's the parks manager, and then we have Kelly Marco, who is a neighborhood leader and organic gardener for the Lakewood Be Safe neighborhood.
All right. Thank you, Amy. Appreciate that. Done a fantastic job coordinating the Pollinator Summit, and I appreciate that. I'm Jim Hasselgren, as Amy said, with the City of Lakewood. And I just kind of wanted to go over what we've done as far as support for pollinator pathways and some of the steps we've taken. As you can see, Lakewood has about 110 parks, equating to about 7,600 acres of parkland and open space, as you can see in the map. And so there's a lot of area that we cover with a relatively small staff. And so we work hard to maintain all those areas and certainly be mindful environmentally for those as well. Excuse me. Our first steps that we've taken, we've established 4 pesticide-free parks that you can see highlighted on the map. Up north is Taft Park. Out west is James Harrison Park. And then to the east, we have Lakewood Estates. And then to the south, we have Rampart Park. So these are parks that we selected that we do not use any pesticides at all in. We completely do mechanical methods or organic means, horticultural vinegars that we use. It does take a little bit more staff time, some repeat visits and such, but we do make those steps. And this is a program that we're looking at extending to other parks within the system as well in the near future. So that's our first step. Well, one of the steps we've taken. Several years ago, the city took the stance to eliminate any kind of glyphosate spraying in the parks. Roundup is the generic term for that, and we've continued that as another step, just as a safeguard for the public, pollinators, and wildlife in the area. Secondly, we've also, overall tried to minimize our herbicide applications and to only limit them to spot spraying in parks, going away from the big blanket applications, and again, just a overall reduction in the amount of pesticides that we're using in the city. Including in that is eliminating any neonicotinoids, certainly not healthy for bee populations and pollinators in general. So we've eliminated those from our inventory as well. Another step we've taken is we've let our milkweed not go, but it's definitely mechanical methods on milkweed, and only kind of keeping in mind our monarch butterflies and their pathway through our city. So we don't spray those. We let them have to be a natural habitat for the pollinators. Another step we've taken is in our greenhouse program. We use an integrated pest management program, which is using bugs and natural predators, if you will, for other pests that we have in our greenhouse, so we can not use chemicals in our greenhouse as much as possible. So it really has worked out well. We've tried it in spots and parks, small spots as well. Certainly another component that we're looking at extending in the near future. And then along with that, through our greenhouse program and trying to source local plants, we've really tried to focus on going to native plantings, native to Colorado in the general area, general region. So we've focused on that, gone away from the old mantra of the annual beds, which are a real drain on water and they take a lot of maintenance and upkeep on those too. So more native plantings, it's kind of showing the public what can be done with native plantings. And we have a great display garden at Kendrick Lake Park, which is on Jewel, just between Kipling and Garrison. If you want to come out and see that, it's a great garden showing different regions of the state in different areas that people can look and see what kind of plants that they can provide in their own homes. Overall, we try to use best management practices. I know we're still looking at the map. We'll get to the next slides here in a minute, but we're fine. Yep. Perfect. Little preview there. So we try to use best management practices to maintain healthy turf throughout the city through mechanical methods, so we don't have to apply so many herbicides at all. Just by maintaining, and that's a good tip for the public too, is if they can keep their turf as healthy and their yards as healthy as they can, it chokes out the weeds and doesn't provide a good bed for the weeds to grow in. Now, additionally, kind of growing on a larger spectrum, the city is undertaken through our sustainability and our city council a goal of increasing our tree canopy across the city in the next several years. Certainly that's going to be a challenge with emerald ash borer coming up, but we're going to be doing our best to do that as well through plantings throughout the city and some support for our community to plant more trees. And we also, certainly want to support our neighbors through our, sustainable neighborhoods. And Kelly will talk about that more here in a minute, and through the Be Safe programs and just trying to help them and coordinate those neighborhood groups and see what we can do there. Out at Bear Creek Lake Park, which is at Morrison and C470, we've gone to, I'm really proud of our staff. They've done a lot of work out there. One of those is the indoor bee exhibit, which is just opened up. We just completed it this year. It's a great spot for people to come and check out, bee life, and the bees start outside and they move inside to our indoor beehive, and then you can really get a good idea of how they move around. And it's a great opportunity to see those bees, specifically the European honeybees. We also have our pollinator garden, demonstration garden out at that same location at Bear Creek Lake Park. So please come out and check that out. We've got informational signs and a whole garden set up that is dedicated to that through the dedicated to pollinator and pathways and bee specific education programs. Through those programs, people can come out and make their own native bee houses and take it home with them. And we also have several native bee houses around the garden. So this is a picture of the garden itself, one of them. Some of the steps we've taken there is, again, the native plantings, which is tough because in that area you can see the hogback is right behind us. It gets really windy. So we really have to be selective, and we've gone through some trial and error on the plantings there. We also don't do any weed fabric there to help our bee populations that live in the ground, pardon me. So this is just some pictures of our garden. It really comes out nice, and it really is, something that we focused on. The flowers and plants are geared toward multiple type of pollinators, including, the bees, hummingbirds, moths, and butterflies as well. And again, we have to because of the wind-blown areas, we have to kind of pick and choose what plants are out there. But really looks nice, and certainly encourage people to come out and check that out. And we, again, we've planted milkweed in those areas to support our monarch butterflies as well. So just a couple more shots of that. And and I will now turn it over to Kelly, and she'll continue on about Lakewood's strategies.
Hi, I'm Kelly Marco, and I'm with the Be Safe Neighborhoods in Lakewood. And I became a bee activist in 2012 because I was very angry. We had bought a large lot in Lakewood, and I was planting like crazy. And then I read the study by Friends of the Earth where they determined that a majority of bee-attracting plants at big box stores were pre-treated with neonicotinoid pesticides. So here I thought I was doing something good for the bees, and I may have inadvertently been harming them. I had not known that this was happening, that this was an issue, and so I started with wanting to just educate others. My first attempt at doing something was writing up a little one-page sheet that I could hand out, email out, post on Nextdoor, and it said, make your yard safe for bees, with basic information about neonics, talking to your nursery, swapping seeds and plants with organic gardeners, etc. The next year, I started calling local nurseries and began a list of who was growing plants without systemic pesticides. The list at first was very small and very localized. And honestly, many nurseries I called did not fully understand what I was asking. I'm not sure I understood what I was asking. I was just winging this and started by sharing the information, and it turned out that people really wanted this. It got shared with beekeeping groups. I got emails from people all over the country wanting a PDF of this, etc. So it was clear that I had hit on something that people wanted. And then my solo venture part of this was about to change. At the same time, 2012, 2013, Jonathan Wachtel of the city of Lakewood was creating the Sustainable Neighborhoods program, where the city would support neighborhoods in improving the sustainability and building community. And my neighborhood, which is Iber, was one of the first neighborhoods to come on board. Oops, I'm behind one slide. Here we go. Sustainable Iber was just starting out with potlucks and speakers and discussions on many topics, and they were looking at David Braden's Living Systems Institute model of bee-safe neighborhoods. This model proposes that getting 85 contiguous properties that are both planting for pollinators and chemical-free could provide a safe haven for bees. Sustainable Iber started a bee-safe neighborhood program, but decided that anyone could sign up, even if their neighbors did not. They created this beautiful logo and signs for folks who wanted to commit to these ideals. This turned out to be a good strategy since the signs are beautiful, welcoming, friendly, and provoke a lot of conversation up in your front yard. So of course I signed up. Now, 8 years later in 2021, there are 10 official sustainable neighborhoods in Lakewood, and 9 out of 10 of those have a Be Safe program, most of which are quite active. So the Be Safe programs in Lakewood have distributed over 500 Be Safe signs. I do admit record keeping was a bit lax at the beginning, but I think I'm underestimating here. And we now have an online sign up so people can take the pledge, and we can track addresses and find out which properties are Be Safe and chart that. And hopefully we'll have that all mapped and online soon. As part of Be Safe Neighborhoods, we hold events, educational events. There's me every Saturday at the Natural Grocers talking to people about Be Safe gardening in the spring. Things for families. Here we are doing some, okay.
Judith, could I have you turn your camera off? Thank you.
Here's some kids building native bee houses at an event. So, and all of this is possible through sustainable neighborhoods. Lakewood can provide us with the signs, the printing, event logistics, mailings. This has really made it possible to get information out there to more people in more ways. Meanwhile, my list of buying Be Safe plants, that nursery list, is always growing and includes more nurseries and more parts of town. And now, when I call the manager or owner of any nursery, they know what I am talking about, and many have their own specific policies listed on their website. However, this issue is so complex. Larger plants that come in from out of state must be managed for pests by law. So many plants start as seeds in one location, move somewhere else, and then eventually get to the nursery. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to trace that supply chain for any kind of systemic pesticides. However, my project got a boost over the summer when Colorado Gardener magazine contacted me to see about expanding and publishing the list for next spring. And People in Pollinator Action Network also want to expand the list to the whole metro area or maybe even the state. And they say that the Be Safe Nursery List is one of their most popular handouts at events, and other groups and municipalities are using it as a model for their own area. So lots more collaboration is ahead on that project. Let's see. So there's so many challenges. I found that overall people know something about the issues with bees. They care, they're worried, they want to help, but they're often overwhelmed. They don't have the know-how to manage a big lot in Lakewood. Often lawn services are becoming more common, and people are busy and don't realize what their lawn and tree services are doing. So many challenges in buying Be Safe plants. It's still not as straightforward as I would like. Another challenge is the general public's perception of what perfect yards and gardens look like. Anybody go out and see other neighbors blowing up every single leaf with a leaf blower knows what I'm talking about. A few years ago, Be Safe Neighborhoods met with Jim, who just spoke, and we were happy to discover that Lakewood had the 4 parks that were pesticide free. And we, of course, want to work with him towards making more. We hope that we can help brainstorm with the city about how to message that a little imperfection in parks can make a huge difference to at-risk pollinators. Finally, this is always an uphill battle, but it's one with great community, unexpected partnerships, and always seems like lots of potlucks. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Our next community is Boulder, and we have Rella Abernathy, who's the Applied Ecological Programs Coordinator for the City of Boulder, and Ashley White, the Horticulture Coordinator at Butterfly Pavilion.
My name is Rella Abernathy, and I work for the City of Boulder, and I'm joined by Ashley White, who's on the horticulture team for Butterfly Pavilion. And the work we're doing together provides an example of the importance of building close relationships and partnerships between cities and community organizations, individuals, experts, and especially how ambitious programs can be developed with small budgets by adapting existing programs. But first, I'd like to tell you the history of how we got to where we are today and how important our community members have been as a driving force behind our work, and as trusted partners who've given their time and passion to improve our community. So back in 2014, the local Sierra Club chapter hosted an event about the decline of pollinators and one of the underlying causes, the neonicotinoid systemic insecticides. 3 neighbors were in the audience that day, and they left with a sense of purpose and created a grassroots organization, Be Safe Boulder. And here you see David Wheeler, Molly Greason, and Ann Bliss. And within 2 weeks of that event, they had organized and got close to 200 of their neighbors to pledge not to use neonics, and then organized other neighborhoods across the city. They also met with local stores and nurseries to remove neonics off their shelves and to offer untreated plants. Be Safe Boulder went to City Council along with the Environmental Club from Fairview High School, Net Zero, to ask for a resolution banning neonics on city property, encouraging the public and businesses to do the same. We all worked together on the language of the resolution and then continued to work together on education and outreach. Be Safe Boulder has since merged with People and Pollinators Action Network, another important partner. In 2015, the resolution was enacted unanimously by City Council, and there was lots of excitement and hope for taking actions that could help reverse the decline of pollinators, aquatic invertebrates, and other insects. There was a parade down Pearl Street and a lot of exuberance and fun in council chambers. Oops. Boulder's advisory boards and city council, looks like I skipped a slide here. Boulder's advisory boards and city council asked for outreach and education with engaging and fun events for adults and children to celebrate and build on the resolution. But we didn't have staff capacity or a budget. A beekeeper friend, Beth Connery, suggested contacting the Bee Chicas, Tracy Bellahumer, Deborah Foy, Cynthia Scott, and Teresa Beck, a group of beekeepers and native bee and native plant educators, to see if they'd help with event planning and project managing. And thankfully, they said yes. As a result, Pollinator Appreciation Month was launched in September of 2015 and has been an annual event ever since, including a large family festival, the Bee Boulder Festival, lectures, panel discussions, film premieres, garden and hive tours. We tried all sorts of things over the years. And then, although the bee chikas have worked countless hours over the years, there are perks, because here they are with Dave Goulson in 2016 at the Boulder Bee Festival when we brought him to Boulder. Pollinator Appreciation Month brings together multiple partners for the Bee Boulder Festival and other events. And this led to a whole new network of partnerships. So we formed the Boulder Pollinator Garden Project to bring together different organizations, businesses, and individuals to share resources and coordinate work. So this is not a complete list, but it gives you an idea of the number of groups involved. And the city also works closely with CU. And this report on the right is from a project with 3 CU Masters of the Environment graduate students about ecosystem services from different types of landscaping. And our expert advisors for this were Amy Yarger from Butterfly Pavilion and Darren Davidson from Boulder County Extension, further cementing relationships and trust between us. This foundation has led to ambitious plans to transform Boulder's landscaping as a natural solution to climate change and to support biodiversity. 2 people who are important to this effort met when attending a Boulder Pollinator Garden Project meeting. Dave Sutherland, who was a naturalist with the city's open space department at that time, and Andrea Montoya, an interested community member who wanted to create a pollinator pathway neighborhood. And Dave and Andrea formed yet a new collaboration and partnership. Dave is now retired and is spending his time as a community naturalist and providing his expertise as we're starting to build out the first pollinator corridor with Andrea's neighborhood at its heart. Ashley's going to tell you about the tools that she's adapting for Boulder from Butterfly Pavilion's successful programs to help build organizing capacity to connect habitat across the city.
Thank you, Rella. Hi, everybody. Thank you for accepting me into your virtual spaces and your ears. So we know that available resources look different for every community as a whole. So naturally, that holds true when it comes to the development and the protection of pollinator habitat. So thinking about resources like manpower, funding, the uses and the users of land, community education and engagement, and so on. Brew talks about open space with our Butterfly Pavilion neighbors and partners, Westminster and Broomfield. Our horticulture director, Amy Yarger, developed a program in 2015 that aimed to address a couple of resources that they had expressed as limited in their pursuits of healthy open spaces. What they identified was a lack of manpower and a lack of education and engagement with their surrounding communities. So the Urban Prairies Project and the Restoration Master Volunteer Program recruits and trains regular community members to become these restoration masters that assist our partners in their goals surrounding open space restoration. And the mission is ultimately twofold: improving the health of open space while also including and engaging with the surrounding community. So these restoration master volunteers are trained in a core curriculum surrounding native ecosystems, restoration techniques, crew leadership, and interpretation that sets them up to feel equipped and empowered to work with our partners on the particular open spaces that they have a connection to, and then in the ways that ultimately feel good to them. So whether that's through hands-on restoration, work with revegetation or invasive mitigation, through data collection surrounding habitat quality and species, or through outreach, through fairs or writing articles or giving tours surrounding the open spaces. And in partnering with the city of Boulder, we can identify that their landscape and resources look much different than Westminster and Broomfield's. We can see here in the map, Rella will have another one and another slide that's a little bit bigger and easier to see. But we see kind of an intricate mingling of what's primarily housing and neighborhoods. But those same limited resources in terms of lack of education surrounding healthy spaces and community engagement still exist. So functioning off of a model similar to the Restoration Master Volunteer Program, we're working to adapt to the unique needs of a neighborhood-based landscape through the Boulder Pollinator Advocate Program. So the program looks to build up general expertise and education within the community in order to kind of generate the self-sufficiency in neighborhoods for working towards the development of healthy, happy pollinator habitat. So this idea of transforming yards and gardens is really at the crux of this. So I'll talk more in the next slide, but we plan to begin in February in a train the trainer format that's utilizing the many amazing existing community leaders that we already know within Boulder, through the Bee Chicas, Andrea Montoya and Goss Grove, EcoCycle, in order to build crews of pollinator advocates that are capable and empowered, situated throughout this Boulder corridor. So the Pollinator Advocate Program builds from a base of knowledge through a core training, sharing information surrounding subjects like ecosystem structure and function, habitat conscious garden maintenance and design, assessing pollinator habitat quality, all while including and discussing and diagnosing the neighborhoods and the communities that are important to the advocate that's actually taking the training. And then from there, the Pollinator Advocate Program will encourage volunteers to continue to build on their own expertise and further their knowledge in arenas that are meaningful to them by periodically offering expertise building days. So offering additional training with experts from other organizations throughout Boulder surrounding things like seed collection or insect ID, native plant propagation, things like that. And by calling for these local experts to be the experts that they are, we can build capacity for quicker change by sharing resources instead of completely reinventing them. And we also gain access to this specific community-based knowledge that can allow the program to be sustainable in that very community. So ultimately, results are well-educated teams of these advocates that are ready to work within their own neighborhoods and with partners in the Boulder community to install and maintain native gardens, to collect data surrounding pollinator habitat and species, and to engage with other members of the community about the importance of pollinators and their spaces and the action steps that they can take.
So you can create the greatest training programs and materials, but it won't matter if people don't participate. We need everyone involved to create the rapid and necessary change to address the climate and biodiversity crises. So community organizing is crucial for success. And here again, we're working with partners who've already built a successful program and we're adapting it. EcoCycle has over 600 eco-leaders in neighborhoods across Boulder, and many eco-leaders will train as pollinator advocates and work within their neighborhoods to change landscaping practices. The Boulder Library Foundation is also committed to this project, and the main library and their branches will be hubs for demonstration gardens, training sites for pollinator advocates, as well as organizing centers for different parts of the city. And though I don't have time to go into details now, an expert green workforce for residential properties is crucial. Two other close partners are Flows and Boulder Housing Partners, who are helping us build trust and relationships with small landscaping contractors. And who are predominantly Latino and who will adapt the pollinator advocacy training while working with small landscaping community to create a program that best matches their needs.
Creating programs through collaboration really builds the capacity of a community as a whole to do work and the speed and the scale that that work can be done. Of course, sharing information and ideas and resources allows us to build off of and alongside things that already exist instead of beginning from nothing, but also including the expertise and knowledge of others doing similar work really facilitates relationship building and trust that can make work being done so much more lasting and sustainable. So if the Pollinator Advocate Program becomes successful, it's because it's being built off of the passion and ideas of women like Andrea Montoya, or the model of a crew like Bee Chicas, or because it will integrate the skill building from expert growers like Michael Bronner from Harlequins, or utilize the assessments built off of the work of Jim Tolstrup and Darren Davidson and Amy Arger. The list goes on and on and on. But its success will also be heavily dependent on the relationship and trust building with regular members of the community. Educating folks to become experts in their own right doesn't just address the issue of lack of education surrounding pollinators and their habitats, but creates this empowerment and stewardship and capacity to make change on a much larger scale that's based in genuine knowledge and experience. So all of that being said, Rella and I and Boulder and Butterfly Pavilion really want to put a call out for more collaboration. We want to invite other communities to discuss and learn from successes and roadblocks and have access to our resources that we're really working to make easily adaptable and replicable. So through collaboration in this kind of work, it is feasible to not only build a large network of highly educated community members and volunteers contributing to good work across the Front Range and across Colorado, but through quality work, it's also feasible to envision a Boulder pollinator corridor transforming into a Front Range corridor or something even more expansive than that.
Thank you, Ashley and Rella. And now I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can have our Fort Collins speakers, Dinesh Halbert and Kate Renschlar will be the next presenters.
Great. Can you see the slideshow?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Okay, here we go, Kate.
All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for having us here today. We're excited to talk to y'all more about what we're doing up in Fort Collins, which we're calling our web of connections. You can probably tell we are working on this presentation around Halloween. Next slide. Just again, I'm Kate Renschlar. I'm with the City of Fort Collins Nature in the City program.
And I'm Dinesh Halbert Sedato. I am a new landscape designer, started Chickadee Pine Designs, but also work part-time with the Poudre School District. And I'm also a member of the NOCO PPAN, which I'll be talking a lot more about People and Pollinators Action Network today.
Next slide. All right, so I'm gonna set up the scene for us about pollinator conservation in Fort Collins, starting with the big picture. So City of Fort Collins, the mid-sized city of about 170,000 people up here on the Northern Front Range. And overall, we're a fairly progressive city when it comes to conservation, and you can really see that reflected in these three areas. So of course, we have CSU and the Natural Resource College up here, which is well-renowned. And we're home to many environmental nonprofits that are tackling many issues. You also see it reflected in our community, who are highly engaged and big advocates for conservation, and their support and their values you really see come out in government policy and programs like our strict development regulations we have, or our very robust natural areas department and open space system. Next slide. So in 2016, the city and the community really took this next step of focusing on urban conservation and created the Nature in the City program. The program was adopted by the City Council and even has dedicated funding through a voter-approved ballot initiative. And this program really came out of this question of how do we keep natural spaces and nature really a key part of our community as the city grows and develops. And so it has this strong focus on private lands and partnering with private landowners. And so one of the key things this program is really working on is how do we inspire and facilitate more native habitat for pollinators and other wildlife in the city. And we really go about that through four main ways. We focus on influencing policy that the city and other departments are developing and implementing. We fund habitat projects. We fund a wide variety of them across the community through a grant program we hold. And we're also constantly creating resources to help folks get involved and overcome barriers or get interested in this kind of work. And all of these we really do through partnerships. Almost all of our work is done through partnerships. And we're really trying to connect with all those different aspects of our community I mentioned in the previous slide. So how to connect with them is another question, and I'm gonna let Dinesh go into that.
Yeah, so as you've been hearing with everyone presenting in this session, the importance of a volunteer. And I'm kind of representing the volunteer. I'm here that busy sweat bee, and really everyone here is going to have their own story of how they became a volunteer. All of you that are attending, it was really a perfect storm for me. I had a passion for pollinators. I just moved to Fort Collins, so I wanted to see how I could get involved in this community. I had industry experience. I was trained as a landscape architect and urban planner. And I wanted to know more about pollinators. It wasn't happening fast enough in the industry. And so I was researching opportunities, I attended conferences, and I knew that my strength was as an organizer. I loved facilitating meetings and reaching out to folks. It's just the easiest thing for me to go up to someone I don't know and talk to them about, what are you doing? And I just knew that would be helpful, whichever organization or group I wanted to be part of. So of course, when you get involved, I went to the Colorado Native Plant Conference, and that's where I kind of learned about People and Pollinators Action Network. And Joyce Kennedy, who was really a great mentor, and she also introduced me to another volunteer, Emma Pett, who also was in Fort Collins. And so she helped us host our first People and Pollinators No Co-interest meeting at Wolverine Farm, and bam, COVID happened. So here we were, so excited to start all these really great in-person activities, but we had to do them all online. So our first project we tried was a photo contest on Facebook, which was, great, but we didn't have that many participants. Emma and also another volunteer, Ruth, they really did a lot of work on doing a Be Safe nursery research, similar to what I forget your name, Kelly said in Lakewood. And then we just constantly are running into what can we do during a pandemic. Also during this pandemic, I got really involved with Nature in the City and all of the amazing programs that they do. For instance, the Nature in the City has a grant program where folks can apply to have their front yards, backyards, what have you, turned into pollinator havens. And I signed up to kind of help, do Zoom informationals with grantees one-on-one, helping them to convert their plant list to be more native plants, as well as just help with general design layout. And that was really fun because you're just meeting like folks that live here and just really care about this project and are doing something about it. I also community science biodiversity monitoring. This is where I really got to know Kate, because she's the one that taught my husband and I how to identify birds and butterflies. I did not know that yet. I was passionate about pollinators, but I couldn't identify a bee from, well, I could identify bees from butterflies, but I couldn't tell the difference between those butterflies from butterflies and whatnot. So that was just a really eye-opening experience and got us outside, and was definitely pandemic friendly. And then also, Fort Collins has some really great parks here, but one of the new ones that just went in was called Sugar Beet Park, and they have a pollinator garden there. Which is just so great because it's kind of one of the first that I'd seen that really was promoting pollinators. And of course, having been just installed, they needed help with weeding. So there was a volunteer group that Rachel with Nature in the City really worked to get going. And it was a great place for me to meet other volunteers and other people passionate about it. In fact, I met one of our partners I'll talk to you about in a little bit, Cynthia Lienefelter with the League of Women Voters there, and just, a great place to kind of meet other folks. But again, the question kept being, what can we do during a pandemic? I had just, been introduced to this really great, pollinator garden space. And then Joyce was talking about how Denver was doing a native seed swap, and it was like, well, that's something we can do during a pandemic. So that was kind of became our next event we were going to try to plan.
Yeah, so when Dinej approached me about joining her crew about doing a seed swap, we were all in, because one of our major obstacles that we run across constantly, and I think everyone here does, is the lack of native plants in the industry. And this is something all of our grantees or all the projects we're working on, it's something we come up against, is being able to find the diversity and wide range of native plants that we're looking for. So the seed swap was a perfect way to kind of overcome this obstacle and have availability to a wide range of plants, and for free, which is also, money can of course be an obstacle for folks to take on this work as well. So we were really excited about the seed swap. The only question is how do you do a seed swap? And I'm gonna let Dinesh talk about how we figured that out.
Yeah, so first and foremost, let's not reinvent the wheel, right? Like, we had heard that the People and Pollinators Action Network Denver chapter had done seed swaps. So the first thing was like, okay, we're going to reach out to them and really lean on them for help. But we needed to bring in some other partners here in Fort Collins. So, through the Nature in the City program, I did, that bee or butterfly and bird learning. I was introduced to the Audubon Rockies. I attended a conference that they had, met quite a few other volunteers and Jamie Weiss there. People and Pollinators Action Network introduced us to Wild Ones. Lisa Olson was really a big help with us starting our first native seed swap. A big thank you to them. And then, of course, I mentioned the League of Women Voters. They had done the weeding at the Sugar Beet Park, but they had also attended People and Pollinator presentations. I had actually given a presentation, like just an introduction to pollinators. and Cynthia had reached out to me, and we've actually done some other projects as well. But they quickly became part of the seed swap. PPAN also said, get in touch with Colorado Native Plant Society. So Ann Grant became part of that. And then she introduced us to wildland restoration volunteers with Anne Marie. So as you can see in that top right corner of that web, we just got so many more connections and so many more volunteers. And obviously we're always looking for, who our next partner will be to help us cross-pollinate and create other amazing events. Yeah, Kate will just kind of talk more about why these partnerships are so important.
Yeah, partners really bring so much to the table. Just thinking of the seed swap event, the knowledge and expertise that Wild Ones and PPAN could bring about how to do the seed swap, not have to reinvent the wheel. All of these organizations have a wider or different audience than each of us could reach individually. So you can really get more people at the event. And then, of course, name recognition and credibility when, you're hosting an event and you can tell people, oh, there's 6 other groups here also working on this, and you can list them all. Folks are probably going to recognize one of those names. So that really helps bring a boost to your event. And then, of course, all the resources. All of these groups are developing their own materials, they can bring different things to the events. Wildlands Restoration Volunteers was all set up to do like a COVID hand washing station, which was great to not have to purchase any of that, but just already have it there. We have different availability to funds and just all of that. So being able to share all these resources is really powerful. And then, of course, the connections and network you can really form by bringing more people together really allows you to accomplish so much more. And I'm going to let Dinesh talk about what we've been able to accomplish the past year and a half.
Yeah, so, it's been great hearing what everyone else in a lot of the other states have been, or not other states, but other cities have been working on. And I just feel some of the stuff that we've done has been this native seed swap. Our first year we had probably maybe 40 attendees. But we did turn it into a trick or treat for native seeds. So we were able to dress up as pollinators. But then our second year, we almost just doubled that. And, again, we dressed up as those pollinators. Here we are acting like pollinators. And then next year, we were able to work or hosted at Wolverine Farms, which I mentioned. That's kind of where we did our first introduction meeting. And they were just there for us again. They gave us a space for free. They've just been a great partner to work with as well. But again, yeah, like doubled the number of attendees. Also, because of the native seed swap, we started the native plant swap. We were able to show the difference between native plants and non-native plants, and just the importance of, yes, having the plants from your garden that are beautiful, but let's make sure we also have native plants. And then, of course, what's been really fun this year is really expanding seed cleanings and collection. This picture is Anne Grant with the Colorado Native Plant Society working with the League of Women Voters volunteers, and they're all cleaning. So they've just been some really great smaller events that we can get people kind of volunteering right away. And then, of course, at every one of these events, new projects are coming up and ideas. And so we've got great ideas for, future plans.
Yeah, I think we're really excited about what we're going to keep being able to do going forward. First off, we're really excited to grow these 2 events, the seed swap and the plant swap, as we go forward, get more attendees there, and also for folks that come, be able to connect them to more resources and more organizations that are doing this work. Try to make it more full circle for them to make it easier to go out and implement some of this work. And, of course, now that we have this web of connections, we're going to continue partnering with each other. And we have lots of different ideas for topics and events that we can work on, ranging from, some really fun ideas around can we partner with one of the breweries in town and have a signature beer to help fundraise for these events, to, partnering on, can we create a group of volunteers that go out and do noxious weed removal, to collaborating on different school programs. So, the possibilities are kind of endless when you have a group of motivated people with a common goal. So we're looking forward to the future. And thank you.
And just again, thank you too, but just hearing everything that we've just heard from the other cities, it sounds like there's going to be a lot more partnerships happening between the cities because everyone has really great programs that we can try to replicate in other places. So this is just, great to be here.
Thank you so much, Kate and Dinesh. That was really, it's just so great to see all of these communities building so many relationships and really creating these collaborations and strong programs. And I just have to say, pollinator people are the most creative, scrappiest people in the world. Thanks for putting your cameras back on. So now we have our assembled panel, and you can see everybody's bright, shiny face. And Judith has joined us. Hi, Judith. So we have some questions and answers that I think really we want, we've heard about all these inspiring things that these communities have done in the name of biodiversity and climate resilience and things like that. So now we want to get some answers from these folks and really learn from them so that we can do this in even more communities. So I'm going to open this up to the group. I've heard a lot about relationships and volunteers, and I would love to hear from any of you about what are the best ways to maintain those relationships over time and really build something that is lasting with these relationships.
Rella says I'm talking. Through my personal experiences with Urban Prairies Project and our volunteers here in the horticulture department at Butterfly Pavilion, allowing folks to really explore what interests them and providing avenues for them to develop their own personal interests really allows them to not get either worn out with the work that you're giving them or it just allows them to have excitement surrounding the work that they're doing still and feeling fulfilled by educating themselves in the areas that they're most interested in. Does anybody else have thoughts?
Amy always reminds me that a pollinator district isn't like a cookie cutter experience. And so Manitou Springs is a historical town. It's a mountain town. So it's very different than when I drive up to Denver. And becoming a pollinator district, part of the fostering of our relationships is really acknowledging that when you become a partner, I'm really curious, like you were speaking to, is like, well, what is your creative genius? What is it that you really want to see to create in your own idea and imagination as to what a pollinator habitat, that long-term pollinator habitat looks like for you in your little slice of the pizza here in our town. And that's been really fun. We get together and we talk about it. And it's also about the Manitou pollinators' willingness to engage with the partners just to show up. Even with Allie, we walk in the streams together. We put our hands in the dirt. We get together and we just work it out together. And that is really where the bonding is really occurring for us in Manitou Springs.
Does that mean that the harder things are, the more we bond? I hope so. That looks good for us in the future. So some of these relationships are among community members and city staff or city leadership. I would love to sort of hear from all of the communities, and maybe we just kind of go through all the communities about what support looks like between sort of community members. So community members, do you feel like you have support from city leadership? City leadership, do you have support from community members? If so, what's been effective in creating those relationships? And why don't we start with Lakewood, because you haven't talked yet.
Thank you. Yeah, I think from the city's perspective, I think, and going back to the first question too, was making those connections with Kelly and Joyce initially, and just sharing what we have to offer. But I think that first initial connection and building upon that was key. And again, trying to figure out what they are seeking, and what they need, and what we are seeking too, and as well trying to work as a partner to figure out exactly what we can each provide.
After starting my pollinator activism solo, and then becoming part of sustainable neighborhoods, I was just simply astounded that the city was printing my materials and mailing them to people and printing these signs. I mean, that's just really like not something that I had expected. And so that's been since, for a long time with sustainable neighborhoods. Getting to know Jim has been good, and I think we're going to do some stuff together for sure. But I just really have been astounded by the support that Lakewood has built in for the sustainable neighborhood.
Fort Collins, how about, I'd love to hear your take on how do we really build those relationships between community members and city, and making sure that both are supported and going forward.
I actually wanted to say that, again, moving to Fort Collins and learning about the Nature in the City program, I was just so impressed. And so it was really easy for me to see that the city was already, invested in the importance of, nature in the city. And, and it was just a matter of like finding out how I could get involved. And, Kate just runs so many different programs that it was really easy to kind of, step in.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just add that, part of being in local government and in the government in general is listening to what your community wants and acting on that. And, this program and what we do really comes out of what we've heard that the community wants. And so, I find we have a lot of support anytime I'm out running a program or running into just anybody on the street and talk to them about what they do. They get really excited about the work that we're doing. So I think, creating partnerships and getting support is, listening to people and hearing what they want and finding that common goal and kind of working together towards that. And so, yeah, it's, we have a great community up here, and we have lots of amazing volunteers like Dinesh out there.
All right, Manitou Springs. Judith, would you like to kind of talk about your experience as a city council member and with pollinator work in Manitou Springs? Judith, can you hear me? All right. Yeah. Melody and Allie, maybe speak from the community members' perspective and.
Sure. Well, the watershed district is a special governmental district, so there's certain things we can do and certain things we can't do. And similar to Kate, we have to listen to our community members. And Manitou Springs being one of them, one of our jurisdictional members, we've partnered with them over the years for cleanups. That's really the initial way that we've gotten our word and program work out there. And, when Melody approached me about this project, it's like, this is a perfect fit. And who else can we bring into this web, that we're all talking about developing? And it's really about, figuring out what resources you have and how to leverage them. So, when we look at Manitou Springs, one of our Brew Shed partners is there. Hey, why don't we work with the schools? And just these ideas keep snowballing. And so I think it's really that collaboration is key, just like you said.
Judith, can you hear us now?
I can. I just want to let everybody, I'm so sorry. I wish I was only just having a day like this, but it's been an entire week. So, but glad to be here anyway.
So Judith, we would love to hear, since you're a city council member, what does it look like when, when we talk about these pollinator projects that are both kind of maybe coming from community members, or maybe they're coming from city staff? How are the best ways for sort of city leadership to support these sorts of programs?
Well, so just so you know, I could see part of the program and I could hear part of it, but I couldn't hear all of it. So I hope I'm not reinventing the wheel here. So we've had the Climate Action Work Group and the Manitou Pollinators and all those community members that have been involved in climate action. And when I say climate action, I mean pollinators on all levels. One of our biggest problems has been getting support from the city. So we have, and of course, COVID notwithstanding, we also brought on a brand new city administrator in 2019, the same year that the resolution 1919 was passed, with 17 action items. The first action item, the number one, was acquiring, preserving, and maintaining pollinator habitat. So one of the things that that I've had to learn the hard way is, at first, it's about persistence. I mean, you as you all probably know, you make these little tiny advances, one step forward, two steps back, and you've got to educate people. People just don't understand. And when they don't understand, they don't put pollinator habitat, climate change front of mind. And so thanks to Melody Doherty and the Manitou Pollinators, who have just been persistent for years, we're finally chipping away at that. We also lost a planning director, gained a new Parks and Rec director. Climate Action was very persistent in getting a sustainability coordinator, the city to hire a contract sustainability coordinator, Conrad Schlersbaum, for Pikes Peak Community College, because we knew if we didn't educate the city, educate all the departments, educate city council, we weren't going to get anywhere. And so we are finally getting somewhere. And one of the most amazing thing that's happening is some synergy is happening. And Manitou Springs is doing a complete overhaul of the municipal code, which has not been updated since the 1970s. And the Climate Action Work Group and the Manitou Pollinators have demanded a seat at the table. And not only have we gotten a seat at the table through persistence, but we have gotten the city to bring on the sustainability coordinator to write sustainability and climate change and pollinator initiatives throughout the entire municipal code, which is a huge win. And so the other thing is, you know I've been listening to your other presentations and they're fantastic, and we're doing a lot of things along the same lines. But one of the things I noticed is that we all are on these different committees and organizations, and I've noticed in the last year, especially in 2020, nobody's talking to each other. For example, I am the council liaison to the Open Space Advisory Committee. Well, no one was talking about pollinators until Melody Doherty came along and said, you know, we should be talking about pollinators in all of our open space and on our trails. And now, for example, we have a standing line item on our agenda for open space where we talk about pollinator initiatives. So it's about persistence, resistance, not giving up, continuing to spread the message, and then getting everybody connected to talk to each other about the same things. So you know how it takes a village to get to where we are in this climate crisis era? It's definitely taking a village that's willing to talk to each other to get ourselves out of it. So I think the collaboration with the Butterfly Pavilion, the Manitou Pollinators, really set the stage for us to be able to do things like our first pollinator garden and work with the Manitou Springs Creative District on the planters. And now a local community group, Pac-Man, which stands for Pedestrian and Cycle Manitou, has jumped on board and is putting together a community composting station at our Flying Pig Farm, which is another collaborator. But in the past, none of our collaborators were talking to each other and doing things as a group. So I'm hoping that moving forward, we've got our foot in the door, we have a seat at the table finally, and we can start to really make some tremendous things happen.
So I mentioned creative and scrappy. Did I also mention tough as nails? Pollinators people are tough as nails. That's what it takes.
Absolutely.
Our Boulder team, what have you all noticed about kind of the support that's necessary from the city versus necessary from community members?
Well, we're lucky that we're all pretty much in alignment with each other, because sometimes I think those are the biggest battles for people. But, we have huge aspirations and very small pocketbook. And so that makes it hard. And, all cities, I think, have gone through some major disruption with COVID. So we were all already stretched pretty thin as far as resources and staffing, and then we lost more. And, it's just been a struggle. And so when you have the community come and ask, to do more, and your fellow colleagues within the city organization asking you to do more, and I think you have to figure out creative ways to make it as easy as possible for people to start implementing these practices. And that's a lot of work for the people who are trying to do that within the city side. But I know that we have such dedicated community members who are fighting hard for these changes and are doing so much with so little. Mm-hmm. So, we share our frustrations with each other, we work together, and we keep pushing forward. And I think maybe the key to all of it is that you feel like you're getting something accomplished, that it's going to make a difference in the end, because we're all doing this to try to, turn things around. And I think people are willing to work really hard and recover from exhaustion if they feel like it's actually moving you forward, and that, you can get others to come along with you, so that we can get this massive change to happen in time. And I'll let Ashley talk about how she feels too.
Okay. I was just going to add that I really feel like all of these wonderful programs and events and reaching out to people, that is perceived as moving forward, and that excites people. And that I just see these like pollinator snowballs rolling down the hill. So I have to hand that to you. That kind of leads me to my next question for you all. In terms of resources, right? A lot of you mentioned the resources that are being generated. And hopefully shared, I think in many cases shared. What is probably if you could share any of the resources that you've developed or models that you've developed, what is something that you really think you want to put out there, share with other communities, get things going for other people as well? And whoever wants to start first, I won't pick on anyone unless nobody puts up their hand, in which case I will pick on someone.
Well, we're really proud of our Brew Shed program. That, Beer Water Connection really meets us as locals, but as also we can connect with visitors as well. How many people come to Colorado and hike and ski and camp and fish, and it always ends at a brewery. So we've really tried to capitalize on that for supporting our local craft beer industry and also getting them to the table. And so we've done some things. I mentioned the Liquid Lecture, which is a monthly series. We feature different scientists or educators or different people with different focuses about watershed health. But then we've also developed what I call an edutaining coaster. So as someone's sitting there, they're looking at, oh, that's what the watershed is, and oh, I should scoop my dog's poop. And so just kind of sneaking that education in through the brewery, I think, has been pretty successful for us.
I didn't realize till just now that Lakewood was really missing a Liquid Lecture series. So things to work for. I think that for me, it's obviously the Be Safe nursery list, because as far as I know, I'm the only person actively doing that. And I do want to expand that. And I do want to work with Joyce, who I know is also working with other municipalities. And so I would really love to get a majority of the nurseries in the metro area along the Front Range to get information. And I think that that's twofold. Is one, it helps the consumer to go make good choices about pesticide-free plants, but it also puts it in the limelight for the nurseries and the growers that they really have to step up and stop using these systemic pesticides. And so I think that's really exciting that we're going to continue to work on this, hopefully over the winter.
I'll jump in with Manitou. Can everyone hear me? We are such a small community, landlocked. We have a 5,200 residents. So first of all, we have an amazing community. But if it wasn't the alliance between the Climate Action Work Group and the Manitou Pollinators and the Butterfly Pavilion, we would be nowhere right now. And the small core group that has just hung in there. And the good news is we've hung in there to the point where we're starting to grow and have some important things to say for the city of Manitou, and people are starting to listen. One of the most important things I just did last week, and Melody and I both attended, was we just joined the Pikes Peak Leaders in Sustainability, which is a regional support group with our regional neighbors. And I was able to attend my first Zoom meeting last week because they changed the day and time that previously was conflicting with another meeting I had. But it was one of the most engaging hour and a half to 2 hours of my time, because I found out what other regional leaders are doing. For example, Samantha Bailey, the Colorado Springs Sustainability Coordinator, announced that Colorado Springs is going to be looking at an ordinance to create a sustainability advisory board, which is what we are trying to do in Manitou. And we made that connection, and instead of reinventing the wheel, she sent the template for the ordinance, the draft ordinance, so we can go to our city and say, hey, our big sister across the street over there is doing this, and now we want to do the same thing, and now we have a template, and we have a community, and we have support to make it happen, so we don't have to start that from scratch. And of course, pollinators will be a big part of that.
And I've got one to add from Fort Collins that really excited about, that we're collaborating with our utilities department, who has a Xeriscape incentive program. And so that's for residents who want to convert their turf to low water use landscapes. And so that program, the Xeriscape incentive program, has been around for several years and has a really large base and a lot of people that go through it. And Nature in the City was offering grants to residential homeowners to basically convert their turf to native landscapes. And so we kind of realized we had this parallel thing going on, and that we could really combine efforts to kind of streamline what we're offering. And so now we're partnering with the Xeriscape folks, and where they offered before a 75-cent rebate to do that program, if folks are willing to use 80% or more native plants, then they can get $1 per square foot. So it's a really, exciting program. Before we were able to fund about 10 homes to these native landscapes, and then through this program we can fund about 40 homes to go through this change to native landscape. So a really increase in impact that we're really excited about. I guess actually I'll add one more, because I might have some colleagues who are disappointed in me if I don't mention it. We just launched this year our Vegetation Database. And so that's a plant database that was created by city staff for Fort Collins, although it would be, applicable in most of the Front Range, at least the northern half. And that's really, we got a lot of inquiries from developers or community members or, businesses who have been getting encouraged to plant native or Xeriscape low water. And, we created this database so that they would have a place to go look and search for this and find it. So that's been a really excellent resource that we've created for our community and would love to share with others.
Well, we have just a few minutes left, so of course I'm going to ask the biggest question. How are these projects and programs and events, how would you like these programs to change the way your community runs? So even looking beyond pollinators, what is the chance for really transforming the way our communities operate through the work that you're doing?
So in Boulder, we try to look at this all holistically. And I think that that's true of a number of organizations across the US and Europe and everywhere else, that pollinators resonate with people. But what we're really talking about is substantial change in the way we manage land. And so that includes the soil, includes tree health. It all ties to human health, to what's happening to the vertebrates and the other organisms in our surface waters. It all ties together. And what we've been doing obviously isn't working. So it's time for bold change. We've got 10 years from what we're told. So, we have to think about ways to change things rapidly. And if pollinators resonate with one group and birds with another and children's health with another, it's all, it all kind of has the same outcome. And so I think that that's incredibly important that we tie our pollinator programs to our climate programs, because native plant gardening really ties into water conservation and climate mitigation and adaptation. And working together is going to be crucial. So, getting good ideas from other cities and having our community partners work together. And cities, instead of saying, oh no, here's another, squeaky wheel resident wanting something, we work together to get things done instead of being resistant. So I think we need to change the way we do business at every level. And we're all starting it. So I'm hoping that we all work together to do more.
I'm going to speak as an Indigenous woman. And so really what I see in my goal and my expectation is for the Pollinator District in Manitou, and we really are moving into Colorado Springs, so things are really happening there. And really you are the great role model of the North. So Allie's really watching, Judith is watching, to develop what you do up here down there, because there's such a fragmentation. There's just a disconnect. So the beauty of the Pollinator District is that it's a community model, and that's been really successful. And then how do we work with one another? Ultimately, truly my message to people is from a pollinator perspective, and as an Indigenous person, is that their value and worth is as equal as yours or mine. And that goes hand in hand with looking at the dominance-based thinking that has created this to begin with. So I think that that's important, and that our message also that the Manitou pollinators are bringing forth is that we really believe that pollinators have a right to exist, to flourish, and to thrive, just like we do. And that's a part of the conversation that I come to the table more and more. It's like coming out of the closet as an Indigenous person. And that I find that when I talk about it, there's always a silence. There's a gap, right? So my work too is like, well, how do we engage? And that's okay. How do we be allies? How do we do this together? But that Indian people, we really do look at it very differently. And that's a part of my motivation of bringing that type of awareness and education to the table, is that for us that they are all our relatives, and that we really aren't at the pinnacle of our species, is that we are all in this together. So thank you very much.
So with that, I am going to give a call to action. And we've had so many wonderful things shared today, so many great relationships shared today. And I'm hoping that this panel is the seed for even more relationships. Some of these amazing things, like the Brew Shed Alliance and templates for ordinances, and thinking about how city codes could be written, and thinking about how parks can be maintained and designed to promote biodiversity and climate resilience. All of these things, how do we all work together to make this something that is not just what a few communities can do because they happen to have the passionate people in those communities? How do we make these resources available to everybody? And so that's something that we want to explore after this summit, in terms of getting communities to talk to one another, to have a place to share their resources, share their ideas, so that, Kelly's incredible list can be all over the place, in Colorado. So that Ashley's volunteer trainings can be something that's available to everybody, to raise up those restoration master volunteers. So I leave everyone with this food for thought, that just to be thinking about how can we connect and move forward so that we have even more of this activity going on. So thank you, panelists. Thank you, panelists. It's been incredible. I do have a couple of announcements. We are going to have a 5-minute break before our closing remarks from Adrian Carper, and you will stay in this session for those closing remarks. So there isn't a separate session for that. Just you'll stay right here. So 5 minutes, we'll be back, and then we'll have our closing remarks and happy hour. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much for everybody. If you're listening, I'm just going to get my computer set up here in this session for just a handful of slides for closing remarks. So we'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see and hear me now. I'm looking for a high five. It looks like there is a 10-second delay, FYI, in case you haven't noticed. So, I mean, hopefully everybody else has enjoyed today as much as I've had. I'm gonna share my screen now for just a couple of slides to wrap up for the closing remarks. So let me just share my screen. Wow, my computer looks like it's doing something crazy. Can y'all see a giant blue bee there? Looks okay. I'm gonna ignore my, yeah, I have no clue what that's all about. Let me just do this. How about this, guys? I'm gonna stop sharing for just 1 second. Now I'm gonna share my screen again. And I'm going to go back to that presentation. Hopefully that looks better. sorry about that visual display snafu there. So at least it was with a pretty picture of a bee. So I just thought for the closing remarks for this, I would come back around to, the whole point of this summit is to build new ways for collaborative conservation action. And, I think we've brought some great examples, both within Colorado and outside of Colorado, about how different types of programs are trying to create and protect habitat, mitigate habitat loss, and to really influence pollinator conservation, management, and policy surrounding those issues. And, I'm trying to do my part as well. So I just thought I'd let you know that the Entomological Society of America meeting was this past week here in Denver, Colorado. And so while the whole goal of that was about sharing insect science globally, I turned it around on them and I shared our conservation efforts through the Colorado Pollinator Network in an organized session on insect conservation at that summit. And so I'm trying to make all of our successes known to the community of scientists who study pollinators as well. And so I just wanted to give a big thank you to all of our Pollinator Summit partners. There's way too many people to thank individually, but there are a few individuals who have really made sure that this summit came to you successfully. And so a big shout out to Rel Abernathy with the City of Boulder, Darren Davidson with the Cooperative Extension. She's the one that's been behind the scenes, making sure that all of these sessions and panels are going according to plan, and really making sure that all those technical difficulties have been getting resolved. A big shout out to Amy Yarger and Mary and Cully from the Butterfly Pavilion, Sonia Anderson from the Denver Botanic Gardens, and Joyce Kennedy with the People in Pollinator Action Network. All of these people have been working tirelessly behind the scenes, not only for pollinator conservation, but to make sure we get this shared with you guys through the summit. Finally, I want to give a big shout out to Brandon and Giorgio from Open Media Foundation for streaming all of this for us and filming all of our panels. I wanted to make sure that they got acknowledgement for their hard work here today at the Butterfly Pavilion, and Magdalena Bonnelly for her work behind the scenes, making sure that Feed Loop was getting all of you guys access to this content. And so just FYI, remember we dropped in the chat about our collaborative exploration meeting tomorrow. So from 10 a.m. to noon at the Denver Botanic Gardens, Olivia Carroll will be there. So if you have a copy of the bees in your backyard or a field guide to North America's bees, bring it to the Denver Botanic Garden and get it signed. And we're also going to use that as a chance to get feedback from you guys attending the summit about what we did right, how we will actually build those future collaborations, and start brainstorming some potential techniques for making that conservation action happen in the future. If you don't have one of Olivia's books and you're interested in purchasing one, go back to the lobby. There should be a link there now to the Tattered Cover Book virtual store. And so you can purchase the Common Bees of Eastern North America or the bees in your backyard. Check out that link there if you're interested. And of course, be sure and stick around for our virtual happy hour from 3:30 to 4:30, or just a little bit earlier, Again, it's BYOB, whether you want that to be beer or bees, I'm happy to see either one. I'll be there in some form. I'll probably be moving back and forth from different groups, following the trail of breadcrumbs to wherever anybody's at. Olivia will be there, and I'm sure several other people from our speakers will be there as well. So join a group, turn on your camera and mic, and let's talk about the summit, about pollinator conservation, whatever it is you guys want. So I'm sure thankful that so many people showed up today. And I want to thank you all for your patience throughout the summit, and looking forward to hopefully next year bringing you an in-person summit from somewhere where we can all get together and have an actual beer together to discuss some of the issues surrounding pollinator conservation. So thanks so much for attending, and I'll see you in one of the rooms. Thanks so much.